So when you interchange any information officially, that is basically known as formal communication. All right, whenever you talk something regarding any official matter, or whenever you have a discussion related to work or related to business, then that particular communication is known as formal communication. So a meeting can be considered as a formal communication, a conference can be considered as a formal communication, circular can be considered as a formal communication, a notice can be considered as a formal communication. So it can be exchanged uh, orally, as well as it can also be exchanged using the written mode of communication. All right, हम orally भी formal communication कर सकते हैं और लिख के भी formal communication कर सकते हैं. So basically formal communication is dependent on the hierarchy of the organization. So the flow of communication is systematic. You cannot communicate each and every person in the organization directly. There's a particular route through which you have to communicate certain people, and you cannot just go and meet anybody at any time. So there are certain rules and regulations associated to it, and you have to follow the rules and regulations. Every organization, they have their own set of rules and regulations, and once you start working in one, you'll understand the rules and regulations of that particular organization. But in general, in an organization, in a company, you have to follow a certain channel, you have to follow a certain route when you communicate, when you have to communicate with certain people, when you want to, rather, when you want to communicate with some people. So the basic rule is to, first of all, communicate with your supervisor. You can directly contact your supervisor, you can directly contact your supervisor. All right, and then if you want to share some kind of information, you have to first of all tell your supervisor. First of all, you have to share with him, and then he can communicate about that particular information with the manager or with the boss, because he can directly contact that person. So there's a proper channel in case of formal communication, whereas in case of personal communication, or whenever you are having some kind of personal conversations, or whenever you want to share regarding some personal details with your friends, with your family, even with your colleagues with whom you have a personal relationship, so you do not have to follow any kind of channel. But when you have to specially talk about work, when you have to specially talk about uh, any kind of work related, any kind of things related to your business, related to your work, you have to follow a proper channel. So some advantages of formal communication is given here. So it maintenance of authority of the officers. So when you communicate formally, the authority of the officers can be maintained. Otherwise there won't be any power, or otherwise the superiors won't have any power, and the subordinates will, try to communicate with them or interact with them every now and then, and will discuss about every small and big problem. So that is why, in order to maintain the authority of the supervisors, of the seniors, formal communication system is very helpful. Next is clear and effective communication. So in formal communication, uh, there is a systematic way of communicating with people. So it is whatever you want to say, whatever information you want to pass on, it's quite clear, and it is also considered as an effective communication, because when you communicate with your seniors, with your supervisors, then definitely you will first of all organize your thoughts, and then you'll tell them whatever you want to share. But first of all, you organize your thought, so that is why uh, it is more clear and it is effective as well. Next is orderly flow of information. So, as I had already said, there's a definite route from one person to another, and you have to follow that particular route. You cannot just go and directly uh, meet the CEO of the company. You cannot just go and meet the trustee of that particular organization. You have to follow a definite route. You have to follow a definite path. So the information flows in a systematic manner, in a orderly way. Next is easy knowledge of source of information. So especially in case of formal communication, you know the source of information, who has informed, who has provided the information, and what is the source of information. You can easily figure out the source of information, because everything is official. Because the even if somebody has said something, so the person can be, like, we can find out the person. How? Because there's a proper channel through which the information has been passed. And if you investigate a little, then definitely you'll be able to figure out who actually has spoken about that particular thing. Whereas in case of personal communication, and whenever you are casual with one another, then if somebody has said something, uh, like 10 days later, you if you even forget it, you might not be able to find out that particular person who has shared the information, or who has actually given the information. So you might not be able to find out the person, because there's no channel, because there's no route, in case of formal, in case of personal, or in case of communication, in case of things that you share personally, in case of conversation, personal conversations, mainly in case of personal conversations. But in case of official conversations, formal conversations, as you have to follow a route, so the source of information uh, can be easily located. So these are some of the advantages of formal communication. Along with the advantages, there are certain disadvantages of formal communication as well. So, I would just like to briefly tell you regarding the disadvantages of formal communication. So, it is not at all flexible. There's a rigid form, there's a rigid passage, so it is not at all flexible. You cannot go and directly approach the desired person. You have to follow a route. डायरेक्टली जाके उस इंसान से बात नहीं कर सकते हो जो एक्चुअली काम करेगा. You have to follow a route, you have to follow a path, and then only you'll be able to share whatever you want to share with the other person. So flexible nahi hota hai. It's not at all flexible. It's a rigid form of communication. Next, delay in decision making. तो कभी कभार क्या होता है, because of the passage, it takes a lot of time to take any kind of decisions, to make any kind of decisions. Then the other things that you can consider as disadvantages of formal communication, that is the authoritarian system. So this communication, it states a clear relationship between the upper level management and the lower level management. So the upper level management always, they can always reach the uh, lower level employees whenever they want to, and they can also dominate at certain points. So that is why this system is also, this communication can also be considered as a authoritarian system. Next is it wastes a lot of time because you have to follow a certain channel, certain route. It definitely wastes a lot of time because you cannot directly meet the person. There are 10 other persons in between. There are 10 other middlemans, and the information will pass through them, so it will take some time, so it is time consuming. So these are some of the disadvantages of formal communication. ठीक है, तो just याद रखो, यही याद रखो कि formal communication कब होता है, जब ऑफिशियल कुछ बात करना है, when you want to talk something related to your work, when you want to talk something related to your business, that is formal communication. Meetings, conferences, official meetings, circulars, notices, ये सब कुछ क्या है, these are formal communication. ठीक है, there are certain disadvantages and advantages of formal communication. जैसे हर एक चीज का एक एडवांटेज होता है, कुछ एडवांटेजेस होते हैं और कुछ डिसएडवांटेजेस होते हैं, तो फॉर्मल कम्युनिकेशन के भी है कुछ एडवांटेजेस एंड कुछ डिसएडवांटेजेस. So I had explained you the advantages and the disadvantages as well. So I have not provided you the disadvantages of formal communication. I'll do it after the class. I'll share it in the WhatsApp group. So let me know if you have any doubt regarding formal communication, or else I'll move on to the next topic. Have you understood? This is easy. I had already done this uh, in the first chapter itself. So whatever today I had explained, it's just like a revision and just to brush up your memory. So I hope you have understood. Is there any doubt? I just want to know, is there any doubt? Okay, then I'll move on to the next topic. This is the next chapter actually. If you check the syllabus, this is the next chapter, the third chapter of the third unit, writing effectively. So in the last chapter, I had explained you what is written communication and what are the elements of written communication, when and when not to use written communication, and also explained you again what is formal communication. So now this is the last chapter of the third unit. Okay, again this is also related to written communication. So basically here we'll be learning about how to write effectively. Apart from the elements, what are the other things that we need to take care of? Apart from the elements, what are the other things that we need to know regarding written communication in order to write effectively? What is the meaning of writing effectively? Can anyone tell me? So, effective writing is basically that kind of writing which is clear, accurate, and informative. Okay? Effective writing is clear, accurate, and informative. So when you can write something, when you can write clearly, accurately, and when you can provide the required information, that is known as effective writing. All right. So we should, whenever we are communicating, we should always try to communicate effectively. We should always try to be clear. We should always try to be informative. And we should always try to be accurate. So, in case of written communication as well, we should follow the same rules. We should follow the same rules and regulations. We should be clear, we should be informative, and we should be accurate. The reader, the person who reads the message or the information, should understand it as soon as he or she reads the message or the information that has been shared. All right. So how will you be able to write effectively? Definitely you have to take care of the components, but apart from the components, I will tell you a few other things that are very important when you write something. Okay, especially when you are sharing some kind of information, especially when you are sharing your ideas, when you are sharing your opinions in a written form. The first thing that you need to take care of is the subject line. Okay, so especially when you're writing an application, whenever you are writing an email, you must take care of the subject. You must take care of the subject line. It should not be too long. As I had already said, that whenever you write something, it should not be, the sentences, the paragraph should not be too long. The subject line, similarly, the subject line should not be too long. It should be of, like 10 words, 12 words, not more than that. So the subject should be specific one, and the subject should always uh, the subject should always show the purpose of the application of the letter or of the mail. So that is why you must carefully write the subject, and it should match with your purpose. Just for example, when you want to take leave from your class and you are writing a leave application. So, what will you write? What will be your subject? Applying for leave, applying for 2 days leave, applying for 1 day leave. And if you are submitting your application later on, then how are you supposed to write the subject? You're supposed to write it as absence from the university due to the reason, due to suppose fever. So this is how you should write the subject line. So this is a general example because it is kind of relatable. You can relate to it. That's why I have provided you this example. Application wala example इसीलिए provide किया है because you can relate to it, because I am sure you have written a lot of applications in your schools as well, in your college, in your schools as well. So that is why you'll be able to relate to it. So whatever application, mail, letter you're writing, you must clearly mention the purpose as the subject line. All right. Another importance of the subject line is, if you do not write the subject line, if you do not write the subject, the other person will not be able to understand your purpose of writing to him. The other person will not even read the later part. The other person will not even open your message if you do not write the subject line properly, especially in case of email. So there's a space. I'll also be showing you how to write an email. So when you are writing an email, there's a space where you need to write down the subject. You have to fill up that space. Otherwise, the person to whom you have sent the mail, the other person will not read your mail because there's no subject. It will come as the if you send a mail to me without any subject, what I will see is you have sent it and the subject will be written as, and the first thing that I'll notice is no subject. There's no subject. It will be written as no subject. Okay? Then why will I open it? It might not be important for me. It might not be important. So I will not read it. I will not open it. So that is why you must be uh, specific about the subject. Next is the importance of subject line. So, why the subject line is so important? What is its importance? So, you need to write down a subject because it makes your mail or it makes your application more appropriate. So, that is why you should write a subject line. As I had already said, the subject line should not be too long, it should be specific, and it should be short, and it should be specific, concise. It should show the purpose. At the same time, it should not be a paragraph. It should not be a paragraph. How will you be able to uh, write down a subject line properly? Here are some uh, points that I'll be explaining you now. Keep it brief. As I had already said, you need to keep it brief. It is not necessary. You're not supposed to, write everything in the subject. You're not supposed to give all the information in the subject line itself. You can do that in the body, isn't it? You are writing an application. You're writing a mail. So you can write it in the body of the mail or in the body of the application or the letter. You don't have to write everything in the subject. So that is why, in that way, just show the purpose of the mail. You need to figure out the purpose and then write it properly. Write it briefly. Next, pique their interest. So the subject lines have to be interesting and it should be unique. So you have to be able to write a subject line that is attractive, that is interesting, so that the reader is bound to read whatever you have written. Okay, so the subject line should be interesting and it should be unique and specific. Specific. Next is offer value. So as I had already said that the subject line basically promises of value. Okay, so it should offer some value. You should not write anything and everything. It should not be something that is too casual, especially in case of formal communication. It should not be too casual. Your subject line should be able to add value. It should be able to grab the attention of the reader, and it should be something that has value. It should be convincing and it should be informative as well, but it should not be long. Just wait a minute. Okay, the last point is build trust. So your subject line must be able to build a trust. Okay, um, because if your subject line cannot build trust, the other person won't be able to, won't be interested to read the rest of the part of the application or the letter. The other person won't be interested to read it. So that is why it should be able to build trust. So these are the certain things that you need to consider when you write the subject line of a letter, especially in case of formal communication. All right, and especially in case of emails and applications. And I'll also be showing you how to write an email. I will show you, uh, like the word that I'm saying, subject. I'll also show you where and how you should write the subject. So I'll be showing you in the next class, because today I have already received the pop-up. I do not have much time, so I just want to know. I'll continue with the same topic in the next class as well. I just want to know, do you have any kind of doubt regarding whatever I have explained now? Is there any doubt? Have you understood